start with you. You know, you being a new father and everything. Well, you have two kids now, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wanted your opinion on paternity tests. Do you think it should be mandatory by law?
No, I don't think it should be mandatory by law.
Why not?
Personally, if you feel like you have to have a paternity test, it has to do with, you already have a lot of doubts in your head that, there's a lot of speculations that goes in your head where, you just be thinking like, okay, what if this child is not mine? You're seeing signs, you're picking up on things that just make you conclude that you have to take a paternity test. As to, for example, let's say you're, in a committed relationship with somebody, you know them for years, and
Right.
you trust them 100%, and all of a sudden you pick up on things where it's like, damn, should I really get a paternity test?
Mm-hmm.
So for me personally, it's like it's definitely a no, because if you're with somebody for a long time and you trust them, that should never be a thought at all. You shouldn't be in that situation in the first place. And I know that sometimes it be catching you by surprise, but I feel like if you're in a strong, healthy, and you maintain a good relationship, then there's no reason for you to get a paternity test.
Right.
Yeah.
But what if, right? What if
Mm-hmm.
you break up with this girl, right? You break up with this girl, God forbid.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2 months later, she comes by and she's like, hey, you're the father of my kid and I'm pregnant with your kid. When the kid's born, are you going to try to do a paternity test? Because you guys broke up and then a couple months go
That's
by.
a good question. Yeah.
And she's trying to tell you that you're the father of her kid. Like, yeah, you trust her, but at the same time, she's probably been with other dudes.
Yes.
So you want to make sure that you're not like paying for child support for 18 years and the kid's not yours.
And the kid's not yours, yes. That situation is a little bit different, because there's a possibility that when you guys are like broken up, like
right.
It could be during or at the end of the relationship, there might be like a possibility that she might have been with somebody else, or where you're like, she comes to you, she's like, oh, this kid is yours because we had just broken up, so you have to take care of it. So that right there, immediately, obviously, you're gonna have that mindset, like, bro, there's a possibility that there's another guy that could be the father of that child. So most definitely I'll get a paternity test. But that's only if you're in that situation. You know what I mean?
Right. I feel you. And Javon, you being a second father of the group and everything, how do you feel about paternity tests?
I feel as though a paternity test, in terms of like, I'm responding to the question you asked, Yarns, like, should it be mandatory? I don't think it should. For I'm a strong believer that it should just be on the person's conscience. Like, if they want to, then they should go through with it, because once you're like in that seat of being a father, things are very different. It's like, I know a lot of people are like by facts kind of like person, like you're a very like logical person. You're not going to probably see things like, oh, like I don't care about like feelings, but like as a father, who has gone through this, it's a much different experience. It's a much different playing field.
Absolutely.
It's not like black and white. It's a very big gray area where there's plenty of things. I'm not going to sit here and say like I know everybody's situation, but if you feel as though like you need a paternity test, I'm a strong believer, and then there's something there that's compelling you to ask. Like there's got to be, because as being in that position, how can you be like if I draw out the picture, like the most basic picture of being a father, like you plan to have a child, or if it's unexpected, you know what I mean? Let's say you're planning a child. Do you think you'd still go to, like you find out your wife's pregnant after planning and trying,
right?
You still go and receive a paternity test after you've done all the work to do that? It kind of just, kind of like
The
in a
values
way
it.
like,
It taints it.
devalues what you've been doing, and in the 9 months,
Yeah.
that entire time you're with your partner or whoever, you get, pregnant through any circumstances, whether it was accidental or not, that's a totally different story. But I'm speaking solely off the fact that this is your partner. This is somebody that you're with. You're both parents.
Right.
Okay. Anybody who isn't a parent, I don't really have an opinion on that. If you feel as though you want to make sure, then go ahead, fine. Because again, you guys aren't partners. You guys aren't really together. So it's not really something that I would really like blame you for if you did want to do it. But should it be mandatory? I don't think so. Because at the end of the day, it's very situational.
Okay. And Irvin, how about you? Do you think a paternity test should be mandatory, and why?
So I am not a father. I just want to state that. So I cannot
Yet.
relate to the two yet. I can't relate to the two previous people that were speaking. But I think
Soon
they
to
should
be.
be mandatory. Whoa, pause. Don't
Why
put
do
me
you
on the
think it
road
should be
yet.
Why?
mandatory?
Why?
Why do you think you should?
Because I feel like it's you owe it to your kid. Your kid has a right to know 100% without a doubt, beyond a reasonable doubt, that hey, this is my mother, this is my father. It allows for your kid to, understand who their father is and understand the significance of it. Also, it protects you as a father as well. So it's not only just protecting the child, it's also protecting you. No one can ever take away a mother's rights to being a mother, because literally they see you push out the kid. But as a father, it can be put in limbo. And everyone has always heard this thing: your auntie come out here drunk, and she's like, "Is that really your kid?" And that's all it takes to put doubt. I'm being honest.
Yeah.
That's all it takes to put in your head. And you know what, be a great counter just for you to be able to say that. I know without a doubt that's my kid.
Yeah.
I think, and it's not. And here's the thing: I don't like the hey, paternity tests don't, like, there's a stigma towards it. Hey, you don't trust your partner. I'm not viewing it as that. I just view that as, hey, your kid has a right to know who their mother and father is and what lineage they come from and what is in their lineage. Because what happens if like you have a disease like that's only hereditary? You would want your
Yeah.
kid to know, right?
Right.
And so that's kind of the point of view that I take from it.
So you just want it to be documented. Not that you don't trust them,
Yeah.
but you just want to have it like stamped that like both parents.
Yes. I know like a lot of people kind of view it like, hey, I don't trust this person. But there's so many legal ramifications for you being a father. You want to make sure that you are the father and you don't get into these weird situations.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Fritz, I know you're very opinionated on this.
I just feel like, no, I don't agree with it at all. So I agree with Yoris and Javon, obviously. And obviously, I'm not a father yet, but I just feel like a lot of guys who's insecure would probably recommend that. But it's like, that's on you, bro. If you get with the wrong shawty, that's on you. Like, you could have prevented that. So I kind of understand where Urban's coming from. Obviously, like, just for documentation. But if it was just about trust, then
Yeah.
that's their issue. You feel me?
Yeah, nah. I feel you 100%.
Now, to add on to Fritz's point, though, I believe what he was really trying to say in Dame's terms, the issue isn't really, what comes with the stigma is, on paper, yes, you can say it's like you owe it to your child, but is it? But again, like I said, when the child arrives, that's not your first thought. So for you to have that thought, there has to be doubt placed in your mind. There has to be a reason.
Right.
Because you don't
like
just
way before
randomly
the child
wake up
comes
one
into
day
the picture.
and it's like,
Exactly. Yeah.
I need to make sure this is my child, after everything you've been through, like, especially if you laid down this
So if the kid comes
like,
out Chinese and you're black, that's not going to go into your mind?
Yo, that's a big question mark right there, bro.
like, obviously, like there are like what is the word? anomalies, like where stuff happens, right?
Oh Jesus.
Of course. But like I'm being realistic. Like that's not like sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes when the baby's born, you don't really find out. Like they don't come out like Chinese, bro.
Yeah.
Like it's after like days of the baby developing do they really like whether they like your shade of skin. Like Azarella, my daughter, when she was born, she didn't come out, our skin tone. She was completely like white.
And were you worried?
And then after weeks, she eventually developed the pigmentation in her skin. So like there are different things to go about, like, but like obviously like in a situation like that, if you see your child is completely resembles a different person, I guess go ahead. Again, but that's reasonable doubt placed in your mind. That all goes
right.
Like what I'm saying, something has to be placed into your mind to want to go there. It's not a subconscious, like you don't wake up one night, well, your partner or whoever is pregnant is like laying next to you pregnant, and you're just like, I want to make sure that's my child. That doesn't happen, bro. Like, who's doing that, bro?
Okay, all right. Now I'm gonna give y'all my take now, because I'm gonna play devil advocate. I don't really have a position, but for me personally, I would never ask my partner to take a paternity test because, like Fritz and you guys have been saying, it's about trust and everything. However, right, I do see what Irvin means, because honestly, it's not really about like you not trusting your partner. It's kind of like what he said. We know who pushed out the kid. You see the mother do it, but like with the father, it's kind of like, how do you confirm you're the father? And it's not even about like confirming your doubts. It's just like stamping it in the public, because like God forbid something happens to the mom and she can't tell anybody who's a father and she dies and shit like that. And the baby's like a baby, you know what I'm saying? Like sitting in a car accident, she has no identification and anything. But like if they get the baby and everything, they look through the records and like, oh, this is the father. Besides a birth certificate, it's really hard to prove who the father is. And even a birth certificate isn't even that valid, because all it takes is for you to sign somebody's name, and then they could not even be the father, but they're financially responsible for the child for like 18 years. So that's just like, that's not even science. That's just like a signature. And signatures don't mean anything. Anybody can sign their signatures. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But like, back to your point about, trust and everything, I definitely understand that. Like, I would never ask my partner for that. But however, if you do make it mandatory, right, you take away the stigma of people having to ask for paternity test, because it's like, as soon as the baby's born, they're like, all right, who's the mom, who's the dad, fingerprints, boom, it's confirmed. You know what I'm saying? That way, nobody has to ask for anything.
And Janai, just to add on to,
like just to say this before you go on, Irvin, I do want to make it clear that I understand why you feel like that specific way, because again, there is a gray area in that period as a man, and you can't really do anything about it. I think a common middle ground would just be make paternity tests mandatory if you're going to be paying like child support or like any other.
Exactly.
I agree.
Especially if you're
100%.
Like, because again, that's the most damaging case, because you can end up paying for a child for 18 years and that's not your child.
Not knowing.
And that's also an insult to the child, because, I've been based, because that puts, that on that child's conscience. I basically was taking money from some random person that's not even my father. And
the child don't care about that, bro.
Your kid doesn't.
The child's 12. They just want their toys.
No, I'm talking about after they're like 18 and stuff, like they're fully grown. The consequences of somebody else would just drop to them.
Right.
I wouldn't want that on my conscience if I'm like 18. Like now I have somebody who has to live with that. You know what I mean? So to prevent stuff like that, just take a paternity test. Like just make it like a thing during the court process. Because again, the court process is very like weird, especially when it comes to like, when you're a father. Like it's really weird. There's a lot of stupid things that should be changed. So that's that I'd say like that would be something to do, because again, that's outside of my point, with, it being you both are partners and you're having a child. But anything outside of that, I don't really have too much of an opinion on.
Okay. Yarns, what do you guys have to say?
To add on to what Javon and the others said, I've actually lived it. I found out at 18 years old that who I thought was my dad wasn't really my dad. So
that's tough, man.
It's, for me personally, obviously me, I didn't really think of it then because I was young. But me looking back as a parent, to hold such a secret, to hold such a burden for 18 years, it's a lot. It's just a lot. Every day you look at your child, and you make him think that a human being is their father when it's actually another human being. So it's like, it's not really fair to the child to put put them through that. At the same time, it's like it really all depends on the situation, because, for example, let's say you didn't want your child to know that their father's, let's say, or a very horrible human being, or whatever bad connotation you want to say. It's just like that puts a toll on somebody mentally. That's something that child has to live with for the rest of their lives. So I do
say
understand.
lying wouldn't do the same thing? Because they're gonna find out eventually that you lied.
Yeah.
Like, who's to say lying wouldn't make that same toll?
Finding out years later is probably a lot heavier than
be upfront and honest, and then let them make that decision.
And which is why if you have a paternity test, which is why if you have the paternity test, you would be able to find out, hey, this is my dad, and develop the bond. Now this person feels guilty of being a father.
You're right.
And like the parents, I understand, but like at the same time, I know you guys are dads and everything, but like there's gonna be certain stuff that your daughters and sons are gonna have to find out, and you're gonna want to protect them. But like they have a right to know certain things, and I feel like somebody knowing who their two parents are, even if like your best intentions are there, they have a right to know that. So if you make it mandatory, nobody gets lied to, everybody's protected, and it just basically dots your I's and crosses your T's. It's not even about trust.
It just makes everything easier.
Exactly.
Yes.
And like if it's mandatory, nobody's gonna ask for it. Nobody asks for a paternity test if it's mandatory. It just happens so that nobody's uncomfortable.
Also, another thing too, let's make it mandatory just for the sole fact that 30% is way too high of a statistic of paternity tests coming out negative.
Hey, but they're going after the wrong woman though.
But that's hey, if you do that, no more Maury. I need my Maury.
But it's like, how do you question, Fritz?
Mm-hmm.
I have a question for Fritz. How do you know that woman is the wrong woman?
It could be good lies.
Check her background. Definitely.
It don't matter.
Like, when you're dating, it's just like,
what does background have to do with anything?
Just go with the background. Like, think about it. When you first start dating this woman, right? You got to see her intentions. That takes time. It's like
years.
Okay. I can't really relate just because I'm about to be married, obviously. But it's like
fiance.
A real man wouldn't like know a woman's good intentions. It's like, it's really hard to explain.
Mm-hmm.
If you know she's the one, you're gonna know. I just.
Exactly. But also, people have thought that and have been fooled. A lot of people are great at liars. Of being
I was just
liars.
about to say that.
And they're pathological liars and they're narcissistic. Like you can be lied to. I don't think it's the case for you.
And we see stories all the time. I swear to God, we check social media like once every 6 months. We'll find a new story that just came out about, hey, I've been fathering this kid for 3, 5, 10 years, and I find out that I'm not the dad. It was like a best friend or a neighbor or a cousin.
Sheesh.
And that's a horrible feeling for any man to find out. Also, at
that point, bro, pick better friends.
That's crazy.
Pick better
friends. But we've seen it on social media. These stories coming out. We see them.
Bro, imagine her homie sliding into her DMs, bro. Come on,
bro. But this is how these situations happen. Like, hey, you trust your woman, but I can't control what this person does.
I have another scenario for you guys too. say for example, you get with a girl, right? And you guys are like young. It's like, for example, you conceived your child very early, right? In your relationship.
Yes.
So say y'all get together, and then like after a month or so of being together, she's like, "Hey, I'm pregnant," and you're assuming like, "Yeah, we've been together for the last month. That's my kid." But like, in reality, she was pregnant for 4 months, but didn't know. You see, like she had good intentions, but she didn't know. You just went along with assuming the kid was yours because you were like, we've been together. So then you don't get a paternity test. You take
that will go back to yours first take then.
Hold up, bro. I'm not gonna lie. As a dad, bro, what you said, bro. He was like, "Yo, she's been pregnant for 4 months. 4 months, bro. You ain't know."
Question mark right there. I'm not gonna lie.
No. Some people could like hide that shit. Like I know somebody that was like they weren't even throwing up at all, and then like they didn't know they were pregnant until like 7 months in. So they didn't have morning sickness.
So you gotta forget about the monthly periods.
Some people are
birth.
I'm just saying.
Some people don't have them. Some people don't have them.
Really? Oh shit! Damn.
But then again, let's not get into that before we get canceled.
I don't think you. Yeah. We're a bunch of dudes, bro. We have a bunch of dudes talking about women right now, bro. We should be having this conversation. Back to the male side, though.
So, just to like, I'm happy that we live in Massachusetts, so this isn't an issue for us. But like in other states, such as like Michigan, for like women to get like, you know, assistance from the government, they have to put down a man's name on the birth certificate. Mm-hmm. So there has been many cases where, hey, I'm just gonna write down this man's name so I can get benefits, even though they may have never been together, or I just don't know who the father is. So I'm gonna pick a random dude from my past. And
that's fraud.
So, no, that is fraud. But a lot of guys end up having to pay for child support, and even in like the cases in like Michigan, they're still required to pay, even though it's proven that they're not the father.
Oh yeah, because you signed the birth certificate, so no matter what, even though they found out you're not the dad.
It's not that they didn't sign the birth certificate because they weren't physically there. They're the father because their name is on the birth certificate.
Yeah.
So the fact that they're not even present there, their name is on the birth certificate. They're responsible for that child. The reason why this came to light is because back in, I believe it's 2015 now, or at least it was brought to my eyes in 2015. Carnell Alexander, he is a Detroit man. He was incarcerated in the 90s. He found out that he was a father during a traffic stop. So he was arrested. They ran the guy's name. They ran his plate. They found out that he owed a significant amount of child support.
Oh Lord!
And then they arrested him, and they arrested him for being a deadbeat dad.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't know, right?
No, he didn't know. But it doesn't matter.
Of course, he didn't know. But he was incarcerated when this kid was being conceived and born. So that's not his kid, without a doubt, because he was incarcerated. So in Michigan alone, they're kind of going through this process of creating a bill to protect fathers from this. But there is a lot of cases, especially like in Michigan, of this happening.
So you see, if you make it mandatory, it gets rid of the fraud. It confirms everything, and it just like example, you're not in a relationship with somebody. They put you on a birth certificate. Now you're a dad.
You don't even someone to walk around with their business card, bro, and just write your name on the birth certificate.
Right.
Question.
Now me, they might spell my name wrong, so I'm Gucci. I don't know about y'all.
Jesus.
Question.
Yeah.
I got a question.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say, right, paternity tests are mandatory now. What do you think? How do you think? I mean, that will affect people who have a strong bond, strong relationship, like some kind of trust between each other, where they feel like they shouldn't have to go through the process of getting a paternity test because they just know. How do you go around that situation? Because yeah, it can be mandatory, but I personally feel like for people that have been together for a while, and they just know that their children are theirs.
It's very
Wouldn't
simple.
that be
Actually,
kind of like?
It's actually very simple. The moment you make it mandatory, it takes it out of anyone's hands. So it's not about trust anymore. It's now it's a government decision. Hey,
but even then,
the government's forcing this.
What happened?
I'll play devil's advocate for a second. When you length of time doesn't really matter, because the more you are with a child, no matter if that child is yours or not, they'll become to be your child, because you're taking them, you're feeding them, they're developing a personality under you, so they will look and behave like your child. So ultimately, you can never tell. It's really hard to, at least, unless it's blatantly obvious. You could end up raising a child for your entire life and then find out at the end of it that isn't actually your child. That's why there's a lot of points for Irvin in that kind of context. But I still am a firm believer of it really goes to be the situation and how much you view your partner. You got to really look at your partner.
I agree to an extent, because I understand the whole concept of time doesn't really matter. How much time you spend with your child, that child eventually becomes yours. But you doing that, in the back of your mind, you think that child is yours. That is your flesh and blood. So the minute that you find out, even if because even if you find out, that's still your son at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, because you feel like that's your son. Yeah.
But because you found out that that's not necessarily your flesh and blood, and you found out so late, it changes everything. You look at that person differently, regardless of whether you want to admit it to yourself or not. In your mind, you're going to be like, damn, this whole time I thought that was my child.
Speaking of children.
That's just...
But exactly. I also have some counters too, because think about it. You're asked to prove your residence. You're asked to prove if you're a United States citizen. You go to the airport, they tell you to bring your passport. I just left. I'm going from Everett to Logan Airport. I've been in the country for years. Why do you need my passport for me to leave my country? So for you saying oh, it's gonna ruin the trust, it's they ask you to verify literally everything, bro.
Everything that is true. Do. That's a very
Social
good
security. Point. Even when you're married, and you go to apply for a loan and shit like that, they ask you. They ask you for and you jointly file and everything. You got to get a marriage license. Everything you do is always verified. So I don't think the fact that they make it mandatory would change much.
Also, it would just hold people more accountable. I hate seeing single mothers and they're just struggling to do things. I would like for kids to know their fathers. And that means holding people accountable. So just in general,
even though they're a deadbeat.
But bro, speaking of deadbeat, what if some mothers actually keep their kids from their dads?
Yeah, a lot of guys may not know that they're a father first.
See what I'm saying? Some mothers purposely choose not to have the father in their life. So if you put paternity test and make it mandatory, now the dad knows he has a kid.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
And that actually happens quite frequently. It's actually, I'm gonna say it's more common than we think. But it's just kind of crazy just to think about hey, you're now a dad and you didn't know. And that shock can be crazy on a guy's point of view.
Yeah.
Because now you gotta raise a kid that you didn't even know was in the world. Now this kid is God knows 10 years old, and you're trying to develop a bond with a kid that existed 10 years without you.
Yeah.